Now, let's read our scanned copy of the physical spellbook that shipped with Ultima IX Ascension. Table of Contents. Table of Contents, page 2. Missive, page 3. A Practical Creed on Magic, page 6. Mana, page 9. Reagents, page 10. The Dicta of Magic, page 13. Linear Magic, page 14. First Circle, page 16. Second Circle, page 18. Third Circle, page 20. Fourth Circle, page 22. Fifth Circle, page 24. Sixth Circle, page 26. Seventh Circle, page 28. Eighth Circle, page 30. Rituals, page 32. Moongates and Other Magic, page 36. Glossary, page 38. Missive. Many summers ago, from the door of my cottage, I watched a figure climb through the stand of pines towards my retreat at the high end of the valley. He came alone and unarmed. Not wanting the disturbance, I conjured a gust to drive him away, but he banished it without breaking stride. Here, I knew, was a man of great magic. Yet he was no man. The figure did not trouble to open the gate, and instead passed directly through it into the yard. In this age of clouded magic, for this spirit to appear with such clarity at my doorstep, I knew he must have been in life a man of broad powers. For him to arrive from a distance showed a respect that I could not ignore. The spirit did not bother then with greetings. I, he said, would scribe a screed on the practical uses of magic for warriors. Magic for warriors? What, I queried, did I have to say to such clumsy trolls? For what reason would I speak to them? My thoughts were consumed with the clouding of the ether, the breath of the magic of virtue. Since the days of my apprenticeship, the ether had been sullied by forces unknown and for reasons unexplained. Without clarity to the ether, the magical arts of the virtuous had faded, and in their place had risen the magic of a dark form of ether. To the few who upheld the traditions of virtuous magic, the addition to our ranks of such a troll who lacked neither the inclination nor the discipline to further our research into the problem verged on insult. I dismissed Hawkwind from my cottage with a request to never disturb me again. Hawkwind was a pest. Each year his spirit interrupted me in my sequestered glen. Each year I threw my newest, most powerful scroll magic at his projection. Each year he threw it into the dung heap. While my two apprentices, Arduin and Grimoire, giggled at my failings, I grew flattered at the attention. His visits spurred my studies, which had flagged in the face of the problems of the ether. This practicum became a yearly discussion. I, let it be said, did no work on such a thing, as completion of it might end his visits. Over many years and many visits, the project gathered shape in our talks. After each talk, I wrote notes, filed them in a drawer, and returned to my humble trade of scribing astronomical texts. On a sleeting winter's night 2 months ago, I lay in the necromantic sleep when a pounding nearly shattered the door to my cottage. In suspicion of a grimoire prank, I threw a magic dismissal at it and rolled over. Yet it did not go away. At the door stood a messenger known to me from a village several days east. He gave a talisman from his neck and a package to me and vanished into the weather. The package contained a note, a scroll, and some herbs to aid the mind's eye. Hawkwind had given me a mighty spell with which to view the maps of the future. The time had come, Hawkwind indicated. Use the spell to see what may be. You will bring the practicum to the festival of the vernal equinox 2 months hence. Before Arduin and Grimoire arose, I placed the talisman around my neck and cast Hawkwind's magic. My mind's eye opened on a smoldering plain of great stillness, a place where no tree grew, no rock rested, and no water flowed. Though clouds of other futures floated like ghosts, I did not plunge into them, for there was but little to their ephemeral shape. In the distance rose cries of pain, or perhaps the roars of victory. Towards them I hurtled, and across the plain did not feel any locus for the virtuous ether that feeds my being. I flew over the ruins of a city of such greatness that it could be but Britain. Harried figures scattered below, as if cringing before my apparition. Onward I flew. The voices grew louder, yet did not divide into people or creatures in the thickening mist of these other futures. Onward I flew, until I could not see, until the roar of voices changed to laughter, to a derision without a face. All of the futures mocked me and my hallowed core of virtue. In the swirling doubt, my hold over the spell magic began to slip, and downward I tumbled through the plain into a blackness that was scattered by the candlelight of my study. I hastily gathered my notes and did not leave them for a fortnight. As I scrambled through my library to assemble the pieces into finished form, chores about the cottage were forgotten. The animals were allowed to roam free. Arduin and Grimoire got into much mischief, yet I did not have time to address them. It is now the eve of the festival of vernal equinox. A conjure finishes the scribing of this letter. The process has humbled me greatly. In attempting to teach, I have learned how little I know, truly, of the ways of virtue. How can I, a mortal, know? I do not know. I do not know. Those 4 words, I have learned, mark the commencement of the pathway to wisdom, a limitless road that now stretches before me. It occurs to me that I do not know for whom this practicum is intended. You are a warrior, a quester. Through your practical means, you must close this crossroads on time's highway. That is all I know. To you, whoever you may be, I offer this limited text and, of greater importance, courage and patience in the pursuit of your chosen truth. May your journey towards it be straighter and truer than I to mine. The Mage Genzer, Eve of Vernal Equinox. A Practical Creed on Magic. Some of the brightest minds expend their life energies probing the mysteries of magic. A rare few can claim mastery. For most, the study of magic is a detour on the path of life into a bramble of frustration or, alas, into a madness from which they do not escape. If you follow this text to the word, you will suffer none of those fates. You will not suffer the frustration, for the lessons herein are simple and direct. You will not suffer the madness, for you will know not to ask the most dangerous question of all. Why? You will learn the ingredients and requirements of spellcasting and some limited understanding of elemental magic. At the conclusion, you will be offered a summary of sundry magic to be found in Britannia. You will know these spells and the nature of potions, scrolls, and the magic of the Moongates. You will know these spells, and you will feel the flow of flawed ether in the world. Yet of these things you shall not question. Your fate is to never know the why. Spells. In the loosest form, magic spells are a harvesting and concentration of the energies of the ether through the person of the mage. Like a focal lens, he attracts these energies to himself and thence expends them outward through the triumvirate of mental exercise, invocation, and placement of objects. These 3 elements are broken into a complex swirl of untenable mathematics, alchemy, and structured language, the mastery of which consumes the better years of a mage's life. During your travels, you may acquire magic through scroll or spoken word. You can cast the spell from a scroll immediately at no cost. However, the energy of binding within the scroll is released, and the spell is thence lost. Should you desire to retain the spell forever, you must inscribe it into your spellbook with the ritual of binding, which cannot be performed for the spell until its circle of magic is opened to you. Spellbook. A magician must have a spellbook to assist in the preparation of each spell. Do not lose your spellbook. Neither lose it or share it with another, for once you invoke the ritual of binding, the book is bound to your life force. In clearer ages, a mage used the ritual of binding to inscribe spells into his spellbook as he acquired them. An inscribed spell was known to the mage forever. Thusly, he did build his repertoire as a spellcaster. Through knack and training, a spellcaster acquired mana, the creative energy of the ether from which the 8 circles of magic draw. Yet these circles have closed to all mages of virtue. To bind a spell of virtue, the circle to which it belongs must be opened. To your spellbook, you can bind only the limited spells of linear magic. To cast a spell from a spellbook costs mana. Expended mana can be recovered by rest, ritual, or potion. A mage can improve his mana in the performance of righteous deeds. There exists a black form of mana which, though freely flowing, you shall not use. You are a mage of the righteous. Endeavor to do the virtuous deed, and your powers of magic will grow. The magic of this tome has been divided into 4 parts. Terse discourses on mana, your link to ether, and on reagents, the binders of the more powerful forms, comprise the forepart of the book. A listing of the spoke words of magic begins your focused study of them. Thence come the spells. Although the light and safe casts of linear magic are of little risk and thus of small reward, they can be of some assistance during your travels. The 8 circles of magic follow in order of increasing power and difficulty of mastery. The circles, alas, are yet closed to magical inquiry. Where the ether is not controlled, magic cannot be bound inside the circles. That Hawkwind has asked for the inclusion of the circles births hope in my heart that you may be the one who brings clarity to the ether and fills the mana of all mages. Should it be so, yours would be the name scribed across all of magic history hence. Mana. In this clouded age, mastery of ether, the breath of magic, is but a dream. To its former masters, the ether is a tangle of impurity. To new initiates, it defies understanding and is readily dismissed. Ours is a faith that gathers few new acolytes. As our ranks thin, so grow the legion of mages who draw upon the dark form of ether. For the elders among the fraternity of virtuous mages, the memory of clear, pure ether draws forth pangs of a youthful innocence that may never be regained. Before the columns, ether was all about us. It was in the beating heart of a stag, in the tremulous changes in the leaves of autumn, and in the tide of the sea. It was that which connects all living things. Now its purity has been defiled, and the spirits of life stumble after each other in the darkness. All life suffers in the misery of this isolation. Inside each mage is a great and empty space that, in richer times, was filled with mana and expended in the casting of magic. Like the breath, ether was gathered to the mage and expelled through invocation and thence gathered again. In this bleak time, one's mana continues to seek the ether, yet finds no satisfaction in it. For to grasp at impure ether is to gather water between the hands. Though it can be held for a time, it cannot be shaped to one's will. Soon the murky ether slips between the soul's fingers and returns to the soil. Should your quests begin to open the ethereal void, you too will sense the growth of mana in your spirit. For in so opening the void to others, you have done the good deed, and the mana that governs the 8 circles of magic herein is drawn to the fires of virtue. Do the good deed. It is decreed in the fabric of your spirit, and you will gain a new understanding of the connections that flow between all things in the world. Thusly will your mana grow. In the circles of magic, the casting of a spell drains the mana of the caster. Some spells continue to draw upon this well until it has been depleted or the magic is dispelled. They with the greatest mana shall find these duration spells of grandest use. Reagents. To create a potion or to bind a spell to your book requires the presence of morsels both rare and common, through which energy can be channeled and multiplied. Most spells require particular reagents whose properties bind the unique magic of the spell into the spellbook. Once bound, the magic of each spell is retained in the book while the mage imbues it with his life force. When a mage dies, so too fades the magic of his book. During travel throughout Britannia, a disciplined mage must always search for reagents. Among common magic shops, you can find the base reagents. Rarer types are hoarded and require patience to find. A forgotten shop or forlorn peak may reveal a secret supply. Some mages scoff at the ritual of binding. What good, they say, comes from knowledge of a ritual without use? Why learn to bind magic when it cannot be thence harvested? In this world of clouded ether and deep confusion, these naysayers gather others to their opinion. Yet I have seen one future, and to ward us from this troubled end, each mage must attempt to build a spellbook. Though you cannot cast the spells of virtue from your book into the world, you must prepare for the day when such is possible, and the darkened world cries for it. The use of reagents in potion making is described elsewhere. Black Pearl. for spells of projection. Born of an oyster bathed in water magic, a black pearl channels energy of projection in manners both forceful and absurd. Like the water from which it was born, black pearl can bind spells of thrown magic. In equal measure, it can make quite a mess. As a young apprentice, I sought to bind a fireball spell, and, in poorly performing the ritual of binding, engulfed my spellbook in flame. A few mages have found steady sources of black pearl, yet they are loath to reveal them. Blood moss, for spells of movement. The energy of blood roiled in battle imbues a common type of moss with a magical potential that is suitable for spells of movement. In binding with this reagent, the mage draws from it the carriage power of the blood contained therein. Sadly, the moss seems to favor the blood of virgins, and reports of abuses have spread from the hinterlands. Garlic, for spells of protection. For eons, common garlic has warded off creatures of undead enchantment, though some have developed resistances over time. In magical application, garlic has powers of protection that invest themselves in the binding of these spells. Yet the usage of garlic can make one weep like a child. Against this power, there is scant protection. Ginseng, for spells of curing. In ancient eras, ginseng was crushed into a fine powder and added to the ale of warriors on the eve of battle. Many awoke dead in the following morning, and much good ginseng was wasted. While you may choose to use ginseng as a primitive invigorator, such a preparation releases a sliver of its restorative powers. In magical application, ginseng binds curative spells and, in the glimmer after the binding, surrounds your person in a pleasant scent. Mandrake root, for spells of power. Mandrake root was known to mages of yore as the root of life for its aptitude in binding spells of power. Once thriving on silted riverbanks, this root in the shape of a human form has since become quite scarce. When found, keep it on your person, as the lowliest thief knows its value on the black market. Nightshade, for spells of illusion and poison. A deadly plant if eaten, nightshade can bind illusions or, if used by different method, spells of poison. Nightshade is so named for its nocturnal growing habits. Of such rarity is this reagent that few know to begin a search after the day has passed. For they who do, such a search is often futile, as nightshade is visible only by means of spell magic. Yet it can be so found throughout the lands. Spider's silk, for spells of binding and holding. Little in the natural world has the tensile strength of a spider's webbing. An ounce of this predator's trap, prepared by a mage, can bind spells of holding and binding. Use spider's silk that has been prepared under proper standards. Though you may find natural samples in your travels, a magic shop knows your intent better than the spider that spun it. Sulphurous ash, for spells of amplification. Sulphurous ash holds the energy of friction from the volcanic eruption that begot it. For magical uses, ash is mixed with other reagents to amplify the energy effects of a spell. So powerful is this reagent that experienced mages can hold a spellbook and know by touch its ashen contents. The Dicta of Magic. Dormant magic does not have good ears. The power of the ether must be drawn forth with a bard's command of voice and inflection. It is mere child's play to memorize these words. Young Arduin, my apprentice, learned the names of the dicta before completion of his chores on his first day in my care. But he has yet to master them, for to invest them with the proper charge requires a full breath, a resonant tone, and a mind clear of distractions. A bright boy, Arduin has discovered that a projection of these tones through his mind's eye as a flame to ignite the spell produces a finer result. He and I practice the sounds of magic each morning, while Grimoire is, alas, off teasing the pigs. On means negate or dispel. Bet means small. Corp means death. Des means lower or down. X means freedom. Flamme means flame. Grave means energy or field. Her means wind. In means make or create or cause. Jux means danger or trap or harm. Cal means summon or invoke. Lore means light. Mani means life or healing. Nox means poison. Ort means magic. Por means move or movement. Quas means illusion. Rel means change. Sanct means protect or protection. Time means time. Us means raise or up. Vas means great. Wiz means know or knowledge. Xen means creature. Ylem means matter or substance. And Zu means sleep. Linear magic. Thus begins your study of spell magic. A good student binds into his spellbook the preparation of each spell presented to him. A bold one commits it to memory, and an impatient one throws the casting of the mind into the world around him. They who have leapt into casting can attest to results both humorous and horrific. While your path leads through the warring arts, you must respect the ways of magic to master these practical spells. Practice the safe casts of linear magic each day so that you may be prepared should the circles of magic open once again. Fate, alas, has decreed that it is so. For many years, the 8 circles of magic have been denied. Ether, the life of magic itself, defies reason and control. To some, the mages of old who could control the ether have brought shame to our failure. Under this dark shadow, we do not gather new numbers. We age, we die. I trust that your fate is tied in some manner to ours. Should chance present itself to you, unfetter the ether before we who can harness it leave this plane. Until clarity returns to the ether, you can use but the spells of linear magic. Let these simple casts aid in small ways your travels. Let them whisper of the greater wonder hidden to the mages of virtue. To cast a spell requires knowledge, invocation, gesture, and more than a thimble of intelligence. Speaking of having more than a thimble of intelligence, something I didn't realize until just now is that the letter preceding each spell name is the first letter of the element to which that spell is related. So, for example, E stone is earth stone. Like I said, I just figured that out, so that's why it was never addressed in the Let's Play proper, nor the reading of the in-game spellbook. But now that I know, I will be uttering the element names as we read through the spells in the physical spellbook. All right. Earth, stone. Invocation, in bet ylem. Suitable for stupid, awed creatures, the stone spell finds favor with apprentices of equally small impression. Grimoire has adapted this spell to juggle baubles to the delight of peasant girls, and to hurl these stones when their swains arrive. In more practical form, stone draws a rock from the earth and flings it at a target. Air, gust. Invocation, in her. Powered by a titan's breath, gust can force a weighty object from its station. A burst of air carries forth from the mage's person, and all inanimate matter is subject to its will. In peaceful application, it can jar loose items out of reach. Fire, ignite. Invocation, in flamme. An ancient spell drawn from a pool of magic long since faded, ignite is still a useful means of lighting suitable items. Many a winter night at the cottage has been cheered by the ignite spell. Once, overly so. In his first attempt at this spell, Arduin destroyed the corn crib, which to rebuild took a fortnight from his studies. Water, douse. Invocation, en flamme. The foil of the ignite spell, douse extinguishes flame in a given location. When Arduin ignited the corn crib, he discovered that douse has limited application and is not suitable for larger fires. Since then, Arduin has mastered the casting and finds frequent use in dousing the pranks of Grimoire, who seems to prefer the destructiveness of ignite. First circle. Herein begin the hidden spells that cannot be cast through the clouds of ether. One of future's byways may unveil them to us tomorrow, or perhaps never again. While the mages who have cast these spells dwindle, theirs is a magic so venerable that you can depend upon the methods contained herein. The 8 circles of magic draw upon 5 elements. Earth, air, fire, and water provide the material which the 5th element, ether, binds through invocation and mental exercise into magical form. The dictates of the spell command the folds of ether to draw forth and to guide particular properties of the elements, which create what is dubbed magic in this earthly plane. Earth, Create Reagents. Invocation. In Ort Ylem. Reagents. Black Pearl, Blood Moss, Garlic, Ginseng, Mandrake Root, Nightshade, Spider Silk, and Sulphurous Ash. Even the disciplined mage can be caught unprepared. The Create Reagents spell allows the caster to focus his mana into the ground beneath his feet, where a single reagent known to him may be extracted. A casting mage is limited to the reagents that he knows by sight, sound, and taste. The produced reagent varies with the terrain on which the mage performs the casting. Air. Lightning Bolt. Invocation. Ort Grav. Reagents. Black Pearl, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. This elegant conjure brings the elemental energy of air and friction to the hand of the spellcaster, who projects it forward as a bolt of lightning. Weaker creatures may receive fatal shocks, while sturdier creatures may be shocked to find themselves rendered hairless. Be warned, for the mirthful sight of a bald goblin may give the advantage to him. Fire. Light. Duration. Invocation. In Lore. Reagents. Sulphurous Ash. Should Grimoire ever find the means to cast light, many a sleepy night of mine would henceforth be disturbed. The light spell summons an orb of light that follows a mage's movements. Its range is limited, yet it can be of great use in darkened catacombs. Some toothy nuisances prefer the dark, and may choose to avoid the caster until the spell is dispelled or mana has run dry. Water. Light Heal. Invocation. Mani. Reagents. Garlic, Ginseng, and Spider Silk. Rooted in the restorative powers of nature, this gentle spell can replenish lost blood and tissue in its target. Though the abilities of its magic are limited, Light Heal may allow the caster to continue until a more suitable place of rest is found. It is a favored spell of Arduin, who, save for the ether, can cast it with consistency. The boy may have a bit of the druid in him. Second Circle. Earth. Crystal Barrier. Invocation. In Vas Ylem. Reagents. Black Pearl, Blood Moss, and Mandrake Root. To the afflicted, the crystal barrier can be quite a nuisance. When cast, a wall of crystal explodes from the ground. The sharpest weapon cannot penetrate a crystal barrier, which provides an excellent means of escape in enclosed spaces. The rarity of Mandrake Root makes it one of the least studied of the Inner Circle spells. Air. Ethereal Sight. Duration. Invocation. In Quas Wiz. Reagents. Mandrake Root and Spider Silk. It is an old ploy of mages to hide items of value from common sight in the void. Lucky is the mage who casts Ethereal Sight in the secret vault of a mage of the Dark Ether, for Ethereal Sight permits the caster to see into the void near to his location. Arduin, who refuses to eat meat, yearns to render invisible sheep destined for the dinner table, but lack of ethereal control and delicious vegetables make unhappy chores for him. When the ether is clear and present, Ethereal Sight lasts until dispelled by the caster or his mana runs dry. Fire. Infernal Armor. Duration. Invocation. Us Flam Sanct. Reagents. Mandrake Root, Sulphurous Ash, and Spider Silk. Infernal armor surrounds the mage in a cloak of fire that protects him from a variety of attacks, notably those by fire. Much to my surprise, Arduin would have cast a perfect infernal armor on his first attempt, if but for ether. Alas, much to the surprise of my young pupil, Grimoire the Prankster cast a stone spell promptly at his forehead. When the ether clears, the first war of magic shall occur on my doorstep. Water. Cure. Invocation. On Nox. Reagents. Garlic and Ginseng. A fortified magical preparation, the cure spell purges the body of all forms of natural poison. Drawn from the pure energies of garlic for warding and ginseng for healing, this spell serves any adventurer who might encounter rats, spiders, or more poisonous creatures on his travels. As the world thickens with the poison of evil and its venomous agents, I must teach cure to my apprentices for their own protection. Necessity motivates the sharpest learning. Third Circle. Earth. Charm. Duration. Invocation. On Xen X. Reagents. Black Pearl, Nightshade, and Spider Silk. Often called the Follower's Folly, the charm spell forces weaker creatures to ally with the spellcaster. In combat, a charm spell can bring enemies to your cause and require former allies to fight each other. Charm lasts until dispelled. When it is, the charmed creature no longer finds the caster so charming. Air, Telekinesis, Invocation, Ort Por Ilem, Reagents, Black Pearl and Blood Moss. Among the oldest spells in existence, telekinesis was widely misused in the moronic entertainments of traveling theater. Nevertheless, it is a valuable addition to any spellbook when a mage desires to manipulate an object from afar. It is quite natural that an experimenting mage might try to telekinese a living creature, yet this spell is not suitable for such a task, which Grimoire discovered a fortnight ago. His anger has yet to cool at the loss of this scroll without the repayment of laughter at the expense of another. Fire, Fireball, Invocation, Vas Flam Her, Reagents, Black Pearl, Blood Moss, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. Drawn from roiling fires deep beneath the soil, the energy of a fireball spell can incinerate an unprotected foe. The primal magic herein requires no special aptitude to master. However, centuries of misbegotten campaigns have weeded many of those most susceptible to it. Water, Fog, Duration, Invocation, On Wiz Her, Reagents, Garlic, Nightshade, and Spider Silk. This incantation draws water from the soil into a swollen cloud of fog about the caster. In the Crimson War, Murak the Lame encircled a goblin horde, which, in losing sight of their enemy, nicely thinned their own ranks. A fog spell drains mana until the magic is released. Fourth Circle, Earth, Time Stop, Duration, Invocation, On Time, Reagents, Blood Moss, Garlic, and Mandrake Root. Often mistook by laypeople for a kind of telekinesis, the Time Stop spell interrupts the flow of time in the vicinity of the mage. In the histories, warriors showed little interest in Time Stop, as one can do no damage against foes while holding the spell. However, in desperate times, it is a convenient means of escape or of borrowing items to prolong the life of the caster. Though your mana may suffer for the theft, pay the price and step forthwith into the future. Time Stop drains mana until it is dispelled or mana is exhausted. Air, Wizard Eye, Duration, Invocation, Pour Ort Wiz, Reagents, Black Pearl, Blood Moss, Nightshade, Mandrake Root, Spider Silk, and Sulphurous Ash. By focusing the energy of the air into the incantation of this spell, the mage can project his vision forward to see without being seen. In my study, I once detected the wizard eye that Arduin had cast from a scroll to peer over my shoulder at my papers. Though thoroughly scolded, the boy will try again when another scroll is found. It is a signal of progress in the student and a warning to the master, who must continue to learn and to seek with the same vigor as his charge. Fire, Day, Duration, Invocation, Vas Lore, Reagents, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. In dark places, the day spell has deterred many an ambush, for it calls upon the pure glow of the elemental plane of fire and spreads it from the mage's outstretched hand. Where walks the mage, so travels the cloud of day's light. More than a single closed environ has been opened when the day spell revealed a hidden exit. Water, Freeze, Invocation, Vas an Flam Grav, Reagents, Black Pearl, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. For a period of time, freeze chills the water of the body to the point of paralyzing sinew and organ and fixing the feet to the ground. When we apprenticed together among the southern mages, Baldir was fond of freezing me in the forest far from our home at twilight's onset. Many a cold and dark walk was spent plotting my revenge against Baldir and his treasured freeze. Fifth Circle, Earth, Summon Undead, Duration, Invocation, Cal Corp Xen, Reagents, Blood Moss, Nightshade, and Spider Silk. This spell of the earth gathers from the ground one undead creature who joins the caster's side to fight. As an apprentice, I once tried to summon a treasured pig and instead called forth the bones of a miner. We seemed to enjoy our companionship until I ran dry of mana. Forthwith, the creature chased me over many hills to the doorstep of my mentor, who dispatched the skeletal fellow back into the earth. The retelling of the story rekindles its embarrassment. Air, levitate. Invocation, Por Us Ilem. Reagents, blood moss and spider silk. With this invocation, the caster gathers a mass of air beneath him and raises his person above the ground. It is a means of both escape and access to elevated stations. I learned of the theft of this spell from a scroll of mine when Grimoire levitated to pluck for himself the finest fruit from our plum tree. As punishment for the theft, he alone gathered the firewood that summer. Fire, bolt of flame. Duration. Invocation, Vas Flam Por. Reagents, black pearl, mandrake root, spider silk, and sulphurous ash. This spell projects a bolt of fire from the hand of the mage and can be sustained until mana is depleted or the caster dispels it. Without control of ether to cast the bolt of flame, my life has been more settled. For both Arduin and Grimoire continue to make mistakes in casting that would burn all of the verdant trees in the valley. For Arduin, it is cause for further study. For Grimoire, it is cause for further experimentation. Water, full heal. Invocation, Vas Mani. Reagents, garlic, ginseng, and mandrake root. A full heal spell bathes the recipient in the waters of life. It heals wounds, cures disease, and restores him to maximum health. In his quiet way, Arduin has pestered me for months to teach him this spell, yet he lacks the skill to cast it. For a warrior with sufficient mana, full heal should allow you to avoid the hospices so that you may continue to drub trolls and thrash gargoyles, as your kind is wont to do. Sixth Circle. Earth, meteorite. Invocation, Cal Jux Ilem. Reagents, blood moss, mandrake root, and sulphurous ash. I fear the day when Grimoire learns this spell, for the fire of an imagination pointed in the wrong direction is a terrible thing indeed. Meteorite summons molten earth energy and casts it down from the sky onto an enemy. Drawn from frictions within the soil, meteorite can be used only in open spaces. However, such a spell can make short work of all but the sturdiest of foes. Air, invisibility. Duration. Invocation, Sanct Lore. Reagents, blood moss and nightshade. To explain the inner workings of the invisibility spell requires a leap of faith at this stage of your training. Let it be said the invisibility spell wraps the caster's person within the folds of air itself. While mana feeds the holding of the spell, the caster remains unseen, yet he cannot strike at another without revealing himself. However, to spring from thin air may give you the advantage of surprise. Fire, Ring of Fire. Invocation, Cal Por Flam Grave. Reagents, blood moss, mandrake root, spider silk, and sulphurous ash. Calling forth the fires of 10 smithies, the caster projects an expanding ring of flame in all directions from his person. It need not be said that this cast should be invoked in open spaces, bereft of companions. They who survive will not share the joy of your knowledge. Water, mana breath. Duration. Invocation, Ort Mani Her. Reagents, ginseng, mandrake root, and spider silk. On first examination, Mana Breath seems a simple cast, for it merely converts water energy into breathable air, which allows safe passage beneath water. However, Mana Breath is the only spell of the 8 circles that can be cast without firm station for one's feet. As such, the alchemic exchanges are subtle and continue to elude me. Arduin offered his assistance on the problem, and it was 3 days before he solved, to his chagrin, the reactions of baking yeast. We did not converse for a week thence. Be cautious in your usage, as each watery step out must be matched by a step back to shore. 7th Circle. Earth. Death. Invocation. Cal On Lore Corp. Reagents. Black pearl, mandrake root, Nightshade, and Sulphurous Ash. Beware the death spell, as it claims a lesser life force and dissipates it into the earth. Do not take its function lightly. The magic is simple and direct, yet casting is reserved for experienced mages, for it is only through experience that we learn the value of the blessing dubbed life. Rare is the mage who can cast death. Rarer still is the mage who is not affected by its casting. Air, Teleport, Invocation, Ort, Pour, Reagents, Blood Moss, Mandrake Root, and Spider's Silk. Teleport is a gift from the heavens. Through invocation, the caster can move on the instant to any spot in sight. More than once, Arduin and Grimoire have arrived in a sweat at the top of Lark Mountain to find me in the necromantic slumber beneath a tree, an empty scroll nearby a suggestion of the means of transport. Without an unkind word, it prods their training. The cautious mage always reserves sufficient mana to cast this spell as a means to escape. Fire, Summon Demon, Duration, Invocation, Kal Vas Corp Zen, Reagents, Blood Moss, Mandrake Root, Nightshade, and Spider Silk. Among the more volatile control forms of fire, the Summon Demon invocation calls forth a creature of the pit to do the bidding of the caster. The key elements are sufficient blood moss to control the beast and a clear voice during the summoning, for a demon can sense tremors in human disposition and has eternity to prey on it. Alas, in the joy of casting such a powerful spell, many a mage has forgotten that a summoned demon will turn on the caster when his mana runs dry and will feather the pit with his robes. Water, Frost Storm, Duration, Invocation, Vas an Flam Hur, Reagents, Blood Moss, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. Many a goblin myth has been writ of they who could gather a storm of ice. Frost Storm summons the worst of the far north climate to the unpraised hand of the caster and explodes snow, ice, and terrible winds from it into the area about the mage. Damage to one's foes can be significant. Into the teeth of a driving storm, few choose to war. Eighth Circle. Woe be to they caught in the wake of the eighth circle of magic, for these spells do not draw from the elements of this plane. Rather, they join ours with the unspeakable rages of the planes of earth, air, fire, and water. The magic herein does not empower the effects of the spells. Nay, the magic merely opens a door that was meant to stay forever closed. Earth, Earthquake, Invocation, Vas Pour Ilem, Reagents, Blood Moss, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. Earthquake can turn the flattest plain into a heaving sea of rocks, dust, and ash. In calling to the elemental plane of earth, the caster tears the land free of its moorings. The lands will shake, the hills will tremble, and the trees will topple. Do not cast Earthquake near anything dear to you, as none is immune to its wrath. Air, Lightning Storm, Invocation, Vas Grav Hur, Reagents, Black Pearl, Garlic, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. From the elemental plane of air roils the breath of the Titan of air. In opening this portal to his realm, the caster brings forth his angry reply. Into a swirl at the fingertips of the mage flies the energy of 1,000 storms. On invocation, he bursts this blight upon his enemies, whose screams drown in the cascade of thunderclaps. They who survive forget neither the magic that opens the portal, nor the blessings that keep it closed. Fire, Inferno, Invocation, Vas Kal Flam Grav, Reagents, Blood Moss, Mandrake Root, and Sulphurous Ash. Inferno joins the earthly plane with the elemental plane of fire, where the currents of flame run deeper than the great sea. When summoned, Inferno spews a ring of fire and balls of flame over the ground about the mage. He who would cast Inferno must do so in an area free of barriers, for the spell defies control by even the greatest master of ether. Water, Searing Rain, Invocation, Vas Kal an Flam Jux, Reagents, Blood Moss, and Mandrake Root. The Titans of the four elements hold memories of their great and terrible invocations on the earthly plane, and never was there a more fearsome use of water than the searing rains of the great cataclysm. In casting the Searing Rain spell, the mage summons this memory from the Titan and brings forth from the elemental plane of water a hail of acid down upon his enemies. Flesh is seared, and they who fall are melted into rainwater. Chaos reigns until the magic is dispelled. Ritual. The oldest form of druidic magic, a ritual draws upon the residue of more dire struggles fought long ago when the world was but a flaming poem. The simple dignity of the rituals herein seeks to caress the aura of ancient rites and guide that magic towards goodness. Rituals take many forms and can leap from life magic to that of death with the change of a single word or the inclusion of a candle. Rituals are closely held magic, for they do not require any rare aptitude or skill to perform. You will learn them from other mages, from ancient runes, from the land itself, when fate has so decreed. Do not aspire to harness them for venal purposes, for their magic is deeper than imagination itself. A ritual is a structured set of rules. Step outside these bounds at your peril. In practice, a ritual is a series of exercises performed with rare foci. The placement of the foci and the person of the mage open vast wells of ancient energy. The mage queries the energy therein, guides it to his purpose, negotiates his spirit across the portal to the far side, and closes it behind him. With these 9 rituals, you form a covenant with their magic. You will use them only for the causes of virtue. Though a ritual requires no mana to cast, it may require foci or particular knowledge. Ritual of Binding. The most important addition to a young apprentice's spellbook is the Ritual of Binding. When a mage learns a spell and wishes to add it to his repertoire, he must bind the spell into his book with this ritual. It is possible to cast a spell without binding it to one's book, yet to do so banishes the magic to the void and destroys the work of a peer. Alas, with the closure of the 8 circles of magic, the Ritual of Binding serves no mundane purpose. Yet for the rebirth of virtuous magic, you must learn this ritual. Sanctify. Drawn from the holy rites of an ancient sect of druids, the Sanctify ritual purges evil from corrupted places. As there is much evil afoot in Britannia, you may have many chances to hone your skill in the performance of the ritual. Sanctify requires the ability to meditate on purely virtuous thoughts, which even for the most blessed requires practice. Restoration. The Restoration ritual can be performed to draw healing energy to the mage. While rest and meditation do restore mana, a performance of the Restoration ritual in a place of virtue hastens the healing and purges the body of toxins in its return to full health and restored mana. Summon Moongate, or Return. To travel as if by thought throughout Britannia was a privilege held only by them who could perform the Summon Moongate or Return ritual. In times past, the caster placed the Orb of the Moons in a Moongate circle of stones near one of the 8 shrines of virtue. He called forth the spirit of the Moongate and requested transport through the gate to the destination of his choosing. Yet the clouding of the ether has obscured the routes through the void. Though the many mages who have gone missing do not lack bravery in their attempts to map again these routes, our cause lacks reason to explain the disturbances in the void and, in desperation, has thrown caution into it as well. Spirit Speak. The Spirit Speak ritual allows the caster to commune with the spirits of the dead. The spirits of them who died in peace are carried to another plane that has no connection with ours. Spirit Speak bridges the planes and calls forth the spirit held in the mind's eye of the caster. The ritual is not suitable for communing with the undead, whose spirits remain bound against their wills to our plane. Reunite body and spirit. Through curse or magic, a spirit can be severed from its body and cast into the void. The Reunite Body and Spirit ritual returns the lost spirit to a living body. The ritual will not raise the dead, as their spirits are bound to another place. To commune with the dead taps a different form of magic that is contained in the Spirit Speak ritual. Summon Pyros. Summon Pyros is but a rumor, a lyric on the tongues of bards, of a terrible ritual to unfetter the Titan of Fire from his chains and unleash him upon the earth. If by chance you should learn of it, do not forget the lyric's coda. So summon Pyros, the Lord of Fire, and bind him to your soul. Though he does your will he return you to his hole. Barrier of Life. The barrier of life draws the protection of the 8 virtues into a physical form that can withstand all attacks, including that of its opposite, the Ritual of Armageddon. This ritual draws the ether nearest the 8 shrines and encircles the caster as if he were the heart that feeds the ether. Though its casting does greatly roil the ether, it does not infuse a permanent change. Armageddon. I have saved the writing of this ritual for the final day before the practicum is to be delivered to Hawkwind, in fear that it may fall into malevolent or untrained minds. He and I bitterly disagreed on its inclusion, yet at his insistence, the Ritual of Armageddon has been included. In sum, the Ritual of Armageddon unifies all of the tidal forces of life itself, good and evil, law and chaos, sight and sound, fire and water, earth and air, into a singular event to which the temporal world has never been subjected. Its effects are unknown and must remain that way. Stupidity has no greater champion than he who would perform the Ritual of Armageddon. Moongates and other magic. Moongates. In gentler times, moongates were the secret corridors through which mages traveled Britannia. A knowledgeable mage could find the Orb of the Moons, perform a summon moongate ritual, and step through the opened gate to travel to a moongate circle of stones near one of the 8 sacred shrines spread throughout the land. Lay people stared in amazement when a mage returned from a day's walk with goods from the farthest reaches of Britannia. The gates were the favored perquisite of those inside the Fraternal Order of Magic. Yet this highway is now closed even to them who would know it. The columns of evil arose from the ground near each shrine, and over time their wretched presence fouled the portals. The moongates could be conjured no longer. Many of my brethren have invested themselves in solving the puzzle of the moongates without result. Many have disappeared into the void, and have yet to return. I too have my theories, yet shall keep them to myself, as I do not wish to wrongly influence your quest. For it must include the freeing of the moongates and the clearing of the ether, else why would Hawkwind ask for this discourse? You must be the one to distill the ether once again, for ether is the breath of magic, and the moongates are her many mouths. Scrolls. During your travels, you may uncover articles of parchment covered in runic, the oldest language of Britannia. These scrolls contain magic of simple form, elegant application, or thunderous might. When you find a scroll for a spell unfamiliar to you, it is best to scribe it to your spellbook by performing a ritual of binding. Thus bonded, the spell is at your disposal in perpetuity, provided you have the mana to cast it. To bind such a spell, however, you must have its circle of magic open to you. Through the clouded flows of ether, such is not now possible. It is possible to cast a spell directly from a scroll without binding it to your spellbook. To do so consumes the scroll and loses it to your use forever. Potions. Magic can be turned to liquid form, as can wool dye and grooming powders. Several greedy mages have been sanctioned for their dyed mixtures. Though all of the chicanery cannot be averted, standards have improved. You may find potions of reputable quality in your travels or at apothecaries throughout Britannia. Drink with caution and in moderation. In your travels throughout Britannia, you may discover alchemy sets with which you can render potions. Combine the requisite reagents with a flask of water and add a gem of appropriate nature. The name and measurement of the needed reagents and gem can only be acquired with experience, inquiry, and travel. Glossary. Alchemy set. The kit with which a mage creates magical potions. In your travels, you may find alchemy sets whose location should be remembered for future use. Casting. The act of summoning and releasing the magic of a spell. Casting combines invocation and mana to manipulate the ether and bind the elements into a spell. Circles of magic. The properties of the element required for a spell place it in one of the circles of magic according to an exact formula. While the definition and nature of the properties are unnecessary for this practicum, let it be said that the outer circles of magic require more control and experience to master. Duration. After casting, a duration spell continues to drain the caster's mana until the spell is dispelled or the caster runs dry of mana. Elements. The fundaments of the natural world are earth, air, fire, and water. From the 4 elements springs the matter with which magic is created. Ether. The 5th fundamental element, ether binds earth, air, fire, and water in magical application. In the world about us, ether is the stitching that binds all forms into the fabric of life. In spellcasting, a mage draws ether to his attuned body and thence expels it from his body as dictated by the spell. Alas, disturbances have clouded the ether of goodness that emanates from the void, and proper casting of the spells of virtue is not possible. The mages of darkness, however, can still cast from a different ethereal source, and have grown stronger for it. Ethereal void. Another plane of existence that folds time and distance into the form of ether, the wellspring of natural magic. For many years, the void has been closed to magical inquiry. What is known of its natural form comes from bardic tale, ancient mages, and legend. Gem. A precious stone with properties suitable for turning the magic of the ether into liquid magic, a requirement for the making of potions. I didn't say anything about this earlier, but I've got to now because that statement is patently false. In the version of the game that shipped, alchemy does not require the use of gems to create potions. I think the most likely scenario here is that it was going to, and that the writer of the physical spellbook was told as much, but then the game designers decided to remove that requirement and neglected to tell the writer of the physical spellbook. Either that, or it was done at the very last minute and all the physical spellbooks had already been printed, and at that point, what do? It'd be very wasteful to print them all out again, so you're kind of just stuck with what you've got. Invocation. The set of spoken words that releases the magic of a spell or a ritual. Some rituals do not require an invocation. Mana. The early training of a mage seeks to attune his body to the ether about him. The acquired ability to quell his mind to the pure thoughts of virtue expands his awareness of the ether about him. This awareness is his mana. A mage with greater mana can manipulate more ether. Thusly, he can cast spells of greater power. Moongate. An ancient portal into the ethereal void. In times long past, the Moongates connected places separated by a journey of many months. The astronomers of Britannia have proven a link between the Moongates and the flight of our two moons, yet as of this writing, the Moongates are closed. Orb of the Moons. A glowing stone. Placed in the Moongate circle of stones, the Orb of the Moons was used in the Summon Moongate or Return ritual to open the Moongates for travel. Alas, the Moongates remain closed to travel. This stone gathers dust from lack of use. Potion. A liquid form of magic. Given the proper training and ingredients, a mage can make a variety of potions with an alchemy set. Some magic cannot be turned into liquid form. Reagent. A plant or other magically capable ingredient found in the natural world which, when added by itself or mixed with others in the ritual of binding, binds a spell's energy in permanence to the mage's spellbook. Ritual. A performance by the mage that can gather the power of foci and invocation to attract druidic magic that has been buried since the birth of time. A ritual differs from a spell as it requires neither parchment nor mana. The simple yet powerful magic herein is closely guarded and will be revealed only to them who have shown a respect for it. Ritual of Binding. The ritual that binds a spell in the caster's possession into permanent storage in his spellbook. Scroll. A spell stored on parchment. When a mage finds a spell, he can either bind it to his spellbook with the use of reagents, or cast it immediately without them. Should he choose to cast, the scroll vanishes and is lost to him forever. Serpent Wine. A rare healing potion concocted from the venom of the silver serpent. Serpent wine must be distilled in the aging casks at the Cathedral of Love, else it is poison. When consumed, a potion of serpent wine restores full health and mana. Spell. A sequence of spoken word and object placement according to a precise set of instructions that harvests and concentrates selected elements to the person of the mage, who, in turn, projects the ether from his body in a form dictated by the spell. Spellbook. A tome suitable for the permanent storage of the spells of a mage. To store a spell, a mage must perform the ritual of binding with the proper reagents. Once bound to his spellbook, a spell can be used by the owner of the book when he has sufficient mana to cast it.